everybody. In case you haven't heard, How to Write Romantasy is available for pre-order right now, and you have the option to receive a free digital workbook that will help you craft a power couple, throuple, or polycule. All the details are in the description. Get on it. In honor of the release of How to Write Romantasy, I'm interviewing a bunch of super talented romantasy authors so we can learn how they achieved their success and perfected their craft. And today we're talking with A.N. Deeb. Adrienne N. Deeb is a Florida native and currently lives in St. Petersburg with her husband and daughter. Adrienne practices emergency medicine by day, closet astrology at night, and writes YA fantasy whenever the story moves her. Adrienne is also a Fictionary story coach editor and teaches classes to writers on story structure. House of Stars is the first book in the 12 Houses YA fantasy series. It also won the 2022 Fictionary Book of the Year award and was shortlisted in the 2023 Letter Review Prize for Unpublished Books. Adrienne is here to discuss one of the most exciting elements of romantasy, or the fantasy genre in general, magic. Magic systems are super fun to create, but they can also be overwhelming. How do you know if your magic system will be entertaining to readers? How do you make sure you're not regurgitating the same someone else has created? That's what we're talking about today. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me. This is awesome.
I'm going to start things off with the most complicated question. What is your process for building a magic system?
Usually I start by asking myself the question, what message am I trying to convey to the reader in my book? It's really important to ask the what ifs. The whole magic system is part of the culture and part of your message. In Lord of the Rings, Tolkien's message is good versus evil. Even the smallest of persons can make a difference. In Middle Earth, where dark forces are basically trying to take over the free people, if he used magic and his wizards to solve the problem, then the theme wouldn't make sense. So in Tolkien's world, you have the strong wizards and dwarfs and elves with their magic, and then the smallest of people are the hobbits. It all fits because Frodo Baggins saves the world. So the first thing I ask myself is, what message am I trying to convey? Then I move into setting, the geographic location that I want to build my world in, whether it's this time period or whether it's in medieval Earth or in the future. The setting's really important because, again, you want to make everything cohesive and work together. If I was creating a book in, let's say, some Native American reservation, the power source and the magic may have something to do with animal spirits or totems, or if the geographic location that I was picking was somewhere between Wales and Ireland, and it took place on this secret island where farting unicorns roamed free, like in Skandar in the Unicorn Thief, then I don't want my magic system to be too complicated because my audience is children and young adults. So the setting is super important. Just like the themes, it all has to mesh and it all has to make sense with your message. You use your senses to explain it. What does your magic look like, feel like, taste like? You kind of fully flesh out that and make sure that it's congruent with the world that they're living in. So themes, setting, geographic location, time periods, and then doing research. I'm really passionate about astrology. I've been studying astrology since I was 19. I'm not going to tell you how many years ago that was. It was a long time. So in my world, when I created magic, I used astrology. So Jenna, I'm going to use you for an example. So I did some research. I'm not stalking you, but I found out that your birthday was January 29th. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, you were born on 10 degrees Aquarius. So in my world, I've created a calendar that's different from ours, but you can kind of figure it out based on the constellations in your zodiac sign. So if you were born in 10 degrees Aquarius, you'd have a little tattoo on your wrist that would signify that you were claimed by the house of Aquarius, and you would live on Uranus, because in all of astrology, Aquarius is ruled by Uranus. I researched astrology and I just know all of the ins and outs of it and kind of use that to make sense and make logic in my world. My first book takes place on Earth, where witches are being burned at the stake. It's a time period where magic was prohibited and looked down on, and people were afraid of it. It also takes place on Earth's moon in the house of Cancer, because in astrology, Cancer is ruled by the moon. I did research to kind of figure out the truths of the moon, for me to find some logical way to explain how they live, what they eat, do they sleep, do they need to sleep, do they need to poop? So, like just kind of to get the ins and outs of the world, because a magic system is totally a part of the world. After I do the research, I sit back and I decide, okay, what are the rules of my world? It's really important to make rules of the world. They do not have to make the page. But as the writer, I have to make rules because I have to be consistent. If I say something on one page and then totally contradict myself on another page, then I'm going to lose the confidence of my readers. And I have made rules about everything. I made rules about Earth. I made rules about my magic on the moon, about the barriers, about wards. You may not know everything in the beginning. So I create like this little Bible and I keep adding to it. It's really important to know your world. But again, it doesn't have to hit the page. Tolkien created, with Lord of the Rings, he created an elven language, right? So that guy had a Bible of what the rules were. We didn't know how Gandalf's magic worked or how elven magic worked, but we did trust him. If your rules are on the page, you're treating it like a science and your reader is understanding that science. If this happens, then that. So magic with limits and costs. And so the next step is really figuring out what you want your limitations to be and what you want the costs to be. Tolkien didn't use the magic to solve the problem, but if you put the rules on the page, then that magic can solve your problems. Otherwise, magic can be the problem that humans and normal people basically use their brains and their courage to figure out a solution. So then once you know all of these things, your limits, your costs, then you can really get into seeing how it works with your characters. Most fantasy books start off with your protagonist or your hero screwing up and not really knowing what they're doing. And let's face it, magic system isn't what's going to sell your book. A magic system is going to intrigue your readers and wow them, but it's the characters and their struggles and how we relate with the hero. We put ourselves in the hero's shoes. Make sure you don't forget about the character when you're making your magic book. You don't have to know everything. You can write them in as you go and you can change them based on what the story, how the story progresses. But in my book, my characters, the hero was the main character that's on Earth where witches are burned at the stake. And so she's trying to hide her powers. She doesn't really know how to use them. What pushes her magic to work is her desperation. And what limits her magic is her lack of self-confidence. Whereas Liam, who is the male protagonist on Earth's moon, his magic doesn't reach its potential until he lets go of his anger. So it's about state of mind. It all goes with the themes of my book. So you have to make it all mesh. And once you get all of these things, then you treat your magic like a character and you kind of watch it grow. And that's how I create a magic system.
I love that. And I love that you mentioned it doesn't all have to go on the page, because a
Right.
lot of writers are so tempted to just info dump the whole magic system. And
Yes.
it's like, or provide like a giant glossary. And it's like, that's not necessary usually. I mean, maybe sometimes every rule is necessary to understand the story, but 9 times out of 10, it's not.
Right. Exactly. I totally agree.
So this question was requested by one of my patrons over on Patreon, Standard Fiend.
Okay.
What is the difference between a hard and soft magic system, and what are the pros and cons for each?
Okay, so I kind of talked about this. I didn't name it, but the hard magic system is the type of magic with defined rules and limits and costs. So it's treated like science. The writer is teaching the readers the limitations and the cost. If they do this, then that happens. It's very expected. Basically, you can use magic to solve your story problem. Your reader understands it, you've defined it, and they know what to expect. It sort of moves the story forward because the reader is the hero and the reader understands what's going on. Whereas soft magic system is more like Lord of the Rings and Game of Thrones, where you're not 100% sure. It's not on the page. You don't know the limits of magic. You haven't defined the magic. Your reader has no idea what to expect. And if you used that type of magic to solve a problem, for instance, if Frodo wasn't the one to throw away the ring, to get rid of the ring, and Gandalf was, he used his staff and just waved it and destroyed the ring, then the tension's gone and it is convenient, and readers will be mad. Readers will be pissed off. Usually a really cool soft magic books is magic can be actually the problem that your characters are trying to overcome or figure out ways to deal with, whereas hard magic can help you solve the problem. The two are very different, and most writers use a little of both. But the pros of soft magic are it's more mystical and mysterious, and the reader doesn't know what to expect. So both are great, but you have to make sure that you don't break the rules, or else if you use soft magic to solve problems, the tension's gone.
I completely agree. It's really frustrating when the magic system makes things too convenient.
Yes.
It's like, okay, well, that was easy. There are a lot of magic systems that are super popular, like elemental magic or shadow magic. How do you take a common system and make it unique?
I think that if you look at history and you really do research and you write about things that you love, you can infuse things that are completely different. In astrology, there are 3 water houses, 3 fire houses, 3 earth houses, and 3 air houses. And in my world, not only are there the elements, but the actual characters, the magical beings, are able to transform into their elemental form. So since your element is air, you would be able to transform your entire body into a tornado of air. And you'd be able to travel. You'd be able to travel, which I call vortexing, where you're traveling faster than the speed of light from place to place. So the element is a part of you. So I think the best way to make an old magic system new is to just add your little flair, add your passion. I have multiple types of magic in my book, but the 2 that are important are the light magic, which is astrology, because the sun is the center of our solar system, and then shadow magic, which is dark magic. The people draw the power from the dark matter of the universe. I have explained what alchemy is, and I've used something from the past. Alchemy was the study of transforming impure substances into pure substances, and the purest substances is gold. But it was also about spirituality, life and death, and there's 3 forms in alchemy. There's salt, which is the body, mercury, which is the spirit, and sulfur, which is the soul. So in my book, I talk about life and death and spirituality and making yourself more pure, living and learning and growing. And so it all goes with my message: light and dark magic unite to fight for life. Both are equally beautiful and good and powerful. It's just your intention. Research the past, and you can always put a different spin on mythology, on alchemy, on astrology, and just kind of make old new again. I think it's really important for the reader, if they understand one concept, like they understand elements. Everyone understands elemental magic. So it's good for them to feel confident. Okay, I get this. And then you just introduce small little things. You show small little things, and they'll grasp a new concept. That's how I do it.
Awesome. So we touched on this a little bit already, but an issue a lot of writers run into is creating a magic system that's too powerful. Suddenly their characters are undefeatable. How can writers avoid this problem?
I think that if your story has good structure, you can avoid it completely. Most writers are familiar with beats, whether it's using Save the Cat or A Hero's Journey, or my favorite is the software, the Fictionary software, where they talk about these plot points where certain things need to happen. But there's 5 plot points that are really important when writing fantasy and making sure your magic system is in check. The first plot point is the inciting incident, where your protagonist is presented with a challenge, and it's usually the first time they have an inkling that the supernatural or magic exists. And then you have plot point 1, where your protagonist accepts the story goal and they believe that magic exists, and they may even use it for the first time. And so your character's growing, they're moving from plot point to plot point. They get to the midpoint where they are proactively going after that story goal, where they're using the supernatural, and it's usually like a false victory, but it's that place where they stop being reactive and they start being proactive. This is the best plot point to make sure that your magic isn't too strong, is plot point 2. It's that place where your character is at their lowest point, the dark forces are at their highest point, and your character is learning the limitations of their magic. They are failing, they're in that deep pit of despair, and they have to pull themselves out in order to get to the climax where they can use their magic to either succeed or fail at the story goal, hopefully succeed. If you pay attention to structure and you make sure that your character is succeeding a little bit and then failing, succeeding and then failing, and then make sure that at those big plot points that they're doing the duties they need to be doing there. You can kind of check and balance that your character isn't always succeeding, because that's boring. And it's okay for them to be mega super powerful at the end of your book or at the end of your series, but you have to make sure that they're failing enough during the plot points where they should be failing, or else your reader is going to put it down and they're going to be bored. There's not going to be tension. So I think if you focus on structure, then you're key, you're gold.
I couldn't agree more. And that's something that I talk about a lot when I'm talking about structure. Is it's like during the rising action, you gotta, you can take them 2 steps forward, but then 1 step back,
Yes.
and then especially at what I call the breaking point, but like the dark night of the soul.
Yes.
That's usually
Yes.
when everything just, blows up in their face. So
right.
I love that you mentioned that.
It's like a heartbeat, you're not just always succeeding or failing, and that's what makes the reader keep turning the page.
Another common issue is making a magic system too complicated. Suddenly, readers need an encyclopedia to figure everything out. When should writers start pumping the brakes on their magic building?
There's such a wide variety of complexity in fantasy magic systems. And I think it really boils down to how good the writer is at showing and not telling. Let's take Harry Potter. You start Harry Potter at the inciting incident where the letters are coming, and his aunt and uncle won't give him the letter, and he has that inkling that magic exists, but we don't understand it yet. He knows that he's done weird things and cool things, so we're learning as the character's learning, like, hey, I can talk to snakes. Oh, this letter's magically coming. There's all these owls outside. And then Hagrid shows up, and Hagrid tells him he's strictly forbidden to use magic. And then Hagrid uses his umbrella and starts a fire in the fireplace. And Harry and us, the reader, are like, what? Like, I thought you said you weren't allowed. So then we enter the wizarding world and we're learning. We have so many questions, just like Harry. I think when your author takes you on the trip with the protagonist and shows you through the protagonist's eyes what the world is like and doesn't info dump, you have all these questions that are slowly answered as the protagonist gets them answered for you. I think that's the key, more than making sure your system isn't complicated, because I've read some books where the system was like super, I'm trying to explain and I can't do the same job as the author, because when you show it and you show your character feeling it, touching it, and it's totally different. So I think the answer is showing, not telling.
I completely agree.
Oh,
thank you. Say it louder.
I mean, everyone used to tell me like show, not tell, and now like after 15 years, I get it.
Yeah.
And you don't get it until you get it, but it's so true. Showing, not telling is definitely the answer there.
This question was requested by one of my patrons over on Patreon, Sophie. There is a fine line between sci-fi and fantasy. At what point does a magic system cross the line from being magic and simply become science?
I think that all hard magic systems are a science, because you have set rules and limitations. They may not be the science of our world, and they may not follow the rules of Earth or the natural rules of nature, but they are sort of a science in your world. I think the difference between sci-fi and fantasy is that in fantasy, there's a limited number of people that can use the power or use the magic, and in sci-fi, everyone can use it. All they have to do is either push the button, use the machine, get injected with a vaccine. It's not as selective. And with sci-fi, the readers believe that you're using the natural laws of Earth or the natural laws of nature and science. And in fantasy, the reader just assumes that you're not. But there can be soft sci-fi, just like Star Trek. We have really great advances in technology, but the reasoning is more like mumbo jumbo. It's not like, okay, it's scientific. I think all hard magic systems, hard sci-fi uses science. You use technology that could be logically explained with technological advances. And in fantasy, anything goes.
Yes, I know exactly what you mean. Thank you so much for joining me. Do you have
Thank
any
you.
projects in the works? And where can everyone find you online?
I just launched my first book, House of Stars. I don't know if I can show you the picture.
Yes, it's so
In
pretty.
February. It's the first in a 7-book series, the 12 Houses young adult fantasy series. The second book will be out probably at the end of February, early March 2026. It's done. I'm editing it now. You can find it on Amazon, Barnes & Nobles, Ingram Sparks, and Waterstones bookstores in the UK. My website is www.andeepauthor.com.
Awesome.
You can reach me there.
So that's all I got for you today. How to Write Romantasy comes out in October, so if you're trying to write your very own fantasy romance novel, pre-order it today. Even better, if you pre-order, you can receive a bonus digital workbook. All you have to do is submit your proof of purchase. I've got the details in the description below. You can also check out my first writing craft book, Shut Up and Write the Book, or you can check out the first 2 books in my award-winning romantasy series, The Savior's Champion and The Savior's Sister. They're linked below. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel. I post new videos on Wednesdays and I host live streams on Mondays. And if you want to be alerted as soon as I upload, ring that bell. Bye! Have you subscribed to my channel yet? I mean, you totally should. I post new videos on Wednesdays. I also host live streams on Mondays, and they're super fun. Go ahead and subscribe to my channel and be sure to ring that bell. That way you're alerted as soon as I post new content.